Hello everyone, I'm Shalise Evans. For this presentation, I'm going to be talking about puberty and middle childhood. The focus is going to be on defining puberty and its effect on youth. I'm mainly focusing on the timing of puberty, both early and late. I'll also briefly touch on factors that affect puberty. The end goal is to be sure that other future professionals, like myself, understand puberty so that they may work better with youth as they are going through this process. This is an assignment for my Family and Child Science Middle Childhood Development course. I explained that the overall goal was to help professionals work with youth experiencing puberty, and here are the objectives we're going to use to accomplish that. The first is to define puberty. Second, explain secondary sex characteristics and somatic growth. Next, list two types of changes within puberty. That could be biological or physiological. Finally, understand the effects of puberty on development during middle childhood. As I mentioned before, knowing the different aspects of puberty can help us better understand what the youth we're working with are going through. While it's helpful to remember your own experiences with puberty, in this profession, we know that one size does not fit all. Experiences are different. This is something that not only we have to remember, but that we may have to point out when working with parents whose children are starting the puberty process. Before we can get into working with youth on understanding puberty, we need to understand it ourselves. Here are two different definitions on puberty. The first is from the textbook Middle Childhood Development, a Contextual Approach by Zembar and Blue. It reads, puberty is the, quote, transition from infertility to fertility, unquote. The second definition is from a journal article done by Kavanagh, Riegel-Crum, and Krosno. Please excuse me if I butcher those. Puberty is the, quote, physiological event that transforms the human body, unquote. When looking through both of these definitions, the surrounding texts state that puberty has both biological and physiological components. Puberty isn't just happening in ways that we can see, but behind the scenes, in the brain, there are many changes going on. Hormone production is being ramped up, and different types of thought patterns are developing within the brain. Puberty is usually most focused on, talked about, and studied for during the teenage years. However, the process starts in the brain during middle childhood. It starts as early as 6 for girls and 9 for boys. The adrenal gland starts the process by increasing production of the androgen hormones. The process is called andronarchy. This is the first in a long series of processes. However, there are no outward signs of puberty during this time. The beginning of the process is purely biological. The following step is the pituitary gland increasing the production of the gonadal hormone in a process called gonadarchy. This can start around the age of 8 for girls and 11 for boys. Combined, andronarchy and gonadarchy start the sexual maturation process. The next step is in the hypothalamus, the midbrain. It signals the release of gonadotropin releasing hormone, or GnRH. In turn, GnRH prompts the pituitary gland to release more gonadotropins. Finally, the gonadotropins promote the growth of sex organs. Some of the most common gonadotropins are follicle-stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and interstitial cell-stimulating hormone. The former is produced by both females and males. The latter, however, is only produced by females and males, respectively. They stimulate the growth of testes in boys and the ovaries in females. This is a very basic level of explanation for the complex process that happens at the beginning stage of puberty. There are many more organs and hormones involved. Here is a figure depicting part of the process. It starts at the point when the hypothalamus comes into the equation. At the top is the hypothalamus, which sends out GnRH. It then signals the pituitary gland to release gonadotropins. In this case, it's luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. This then kickstarts the growth of sex organs, which later produce the hormones testosterone and estrogen. These hormones help with the later changes in growth that develop during later puberty. Now that we know a bit about the biological happenings of the brain in the beginnings of puberty, let's talk about the outward physical signs. Some of which are things that not only will the youth that we work with start to notice, but so will their family and peers. The physical signs of puberty will manifest themselves as secondary sex characteristics and somatic growth. Secondary sex characteristics are features that appear during puberty. This includes pubic hair, body hair, such as underarm or leg hair, and breast and genital development. Somatic growth is the changes in height, weight, and proportion of the body. Somatic growth changes are brought on by the thyroid and growth hormones, as well as estrogen and testosterone, both of which are sex steroids. When looking specifically at middle childhood, only the start of many of the changes that occur during puberty are seen. Depending on how fast a child goes through the process, the end of the majority of the changes won't happen until adolescence. That being said, here are some of the things that will usually appear during the 5 to 11 year age range. For girls, breast buds will start to develop between the ages of 8 and 13. This usually happens right before or concurrently with growth in height. Following right after that is the growth of pubic hair, body growth, then menarche, or the onset of menstruation. Since boys usually start puberty later than girls, there will be fewer developments seen during middle childhood. However, what usually starts developing then is the growth of the testes and pubic hair starting around age 10, the beginnings of body growth at around age 10 and a half, and penis growth around 11, the tail end of middle childhood. I will mention again that these are just average ranges for the time of puberty. There are early and late bloomers, which I will address in a bit. Puberty is a process that will start and end on its own. It's a natural process that the body is going to perform, no prompting needed. However, there are factors that may have an effect on the timing of puberty, be it delaying the process or creating an early onset. Nutrition is one such factor. In addition, there is weight. There have been several studies that discuss obesity being a factor in the early onset of puberty for girls. However, the opposite is shown for boys. Boys that are obese during middle childhood have been shown to have a delayed puberty. Another factor is stress. Exercise is also thought to be an influencing factor. Another factor is genetics. Genetics have been discussed as a big factor not only in the onset of puberty, but in early onset of menarche. Familial stress and interactions have also been noted by some studies to be related to early onset of puberty in girls. Ellis and Garber state that early onset of puberty is connected to marital or family stress, maternal depression, or the presence of a stepfather. Socioeconomic status is another factor that could affect puberty. However, it's noted that boys in economically unstable homes are more likely to be affected by early puberty than girls. A few slides back, I had mentioned that there are early and late bloomers. In the next few slides, I'll discuss what the effects are for early and late bloomers for both boys and girls. Overall, early maturing can have a lot of negative effects on both boys and girls. I'll start with focusing on early maturing girls. There is a lot of research on the effects of early puberty for girls. When puberty hits early for girls, they struggle more to adapt to their changes. They look different from their peers. They're taller and heavier in weight. Although they look like adolescents, they're still mentally and emotionally a child. They're treated and viewed as older than they are by their peers and some adults. As a result, they end up hanging out with people older than them who participate in risky activities and perform poorly in school. They also have less self-satisfaction. In this case, that means their self-image, views on their body weight, and height are poor. Due to this, these girls are at a higher risk for experiencing psychological distress. Finally, the combination of distance from their peers and psychological distress can lead to problem behavior such as alcohol and drug abuse, as well as early sexual activity. Moving on to late maturing girls. There aren't any extra risk found with the delayed puberty in the way that there are with early puberty. Girls that have a delayed puberty are on par with girls that mature at an average or regular time. In fact, girls that mature late are less concerned about their body weight and self-image than early maturing girls. In regards to physical differences, girls that mature later tend to be taller. Early puberty in boys was originally believed to have little to no risk in comparison to late maturing boys. However, that idea has recently changed. While boys who mature early find more satisfaction in their appearance and are admired by peers, they do have some extra risk. Early maturing boys are more likely to exhibit hostile feelings, experience depression, and participate in delinquent behavior and early sexual activity. While there were little to no higher risk for girls that matured late, the same cannot be said about late maturing boys. When boys experience a delayed puberty, they are more likely to experience depression, have low self-esteem, and have a poor self-image. While their post-pubescent peers are excelling in some areas of athletics and having no trouble socializing, boys with experiencing delayed puberty are often treated as less mature than their peers simply by appearances. Now that we've discussed puberty and its effects, let's talk a bit about the relationships between parents and children going through puberty. The next slide will be a video from the Parent Toolkit. It will look to discuss parents working with their children during this confusing time. However, it is also beneficial for us as future professionals when working with children going through puberty.
Welcome to middle school, where bad judgment, irrationality, and selfishness may seem like your child's new normal. In reality, their brain is just going through a major transformation. When puberty hits, a burst of hormones is released from the pituitary gland, causing a flurry of changes from more body hair to intense, fluctuating emotions. As the prefrontal cortex continues to develop, these emotions take the wheel, becoming the basis for how your middle schooler interprets the world. Don't worry, it's only temporary, and their brain is actually improving, growing faster than at any other time in their life aside from when they were a baby. Above all, middle schoolers want to know if they're normal. Tell them explicitly, you are normal. Then show them how normal is a spectrum that looks different for every kid. Do all of their friends have the same eye color? Probably not. Similarly, each of them will have their own unique experience with puberty. Help your middle schooler understand the changes in their brain. It will help them identify their emotions and recognize how they're feeling before something upsets them. Take time to listen to them. Instead of jumping to give advice, try asking what they need. Even just a few minutes of your full attention will make your middle schooler feel heard.
While that video was aimed at parents interacting with their children, it's important for us as future professionals as well. There are things we need to keep in mind when working with youth experiencing puberty. It's important to remember the child's age. If they're experiencing early puberty, know that they may not understand as much or act as you expect them to. They're still young and learning. The next thing is to talk to children about puberty, even if that's making sure that the family that you are working with talk to their children about puberty. Children benefit from learning about what they're going to go through beforehand as well as during the process. By talking to them about what they'll experience, they are more prepared to handle the physical, emotional, and mental challenges. Be sure those conversations shed a positive light on this situation. In order to combat the negative experiences or responses youth may get from puberty or their peers, talk to them about the good changes that are happening. As the video said, make sure that they know what's happening is normal. They aren't unusual or alone in their experiences. It's especially important to talk to any youth going through early puberty about the advances they may get from older peers and those around them that think they're older than they are. Allow them to ask questions. They may be confused, or they may ask questions day after day, or they may not. Be sure to create an environment where they feel comfortable talking to you about this. It may be a hard conversation for the both of you, but just lay everything out on the table, be honest, and if they have questions, answer to the best of your ability. Even if that means saying you don't know and looking up the answer. Which takes us to the last point. Listen to them. I know I've said it myself that kids may be confused during this time, but that may not be true. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they're angry and don't understand why. The best thing to do to support them is to listen to what they're saying to you. Puberty is a unique situation for everyone. It can't be perfectly mapped. With every child, you're going to go through a new experience, but talking, listening, and creating an open environment are methods that can work across the board.